Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Samantha Ramsdell. Samantha is a content creator, comedian, and singer-songwriter, best known for having an exceptionally large mouth. As a matter of fact, it's the Guinness Book of World Records' largest mouth for a female. And with over 2 million followers on TikTok and recently being seen on The Ellen Show, she's making waves as one of the funniest women on social media. In this episode, we talk about content creation, her recent leap into being a full-time content creator, and so much more. This episode is going to make you laugh while giving you insights into entrepreneurship, accepting yourself for who you truly are, and tips on how to go viral. Now, before we dive into the episode, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Summit Live is finally happening in May. We have less than 60 tickets left, so head over to growthnowsummit.com and grab your tickets today. Prices go up soon, so head over there now. And now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Samantha Ramsdell. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Of course. So it's interesting. I realize I've been following you, at least on Instagram, for quite some time because of the content you create. And I don't even remember why, like what I saw that made me click follow or whatever. But I'm really interested in diving into your story because I've been able to kind of see the progression, right? Like I've followed you long enough, at least, that I've seen such a growth and progression in what you're doing. But why don't we take a second? You explain to my audience who you are today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Yes, totally. So as of today, most people probably know me as Big Mouth Girl on TikTok. If you're on the TikToks, then you've probably seen my massive mouth gape cross your For You page, probably shoving something in there or doing something stupid. So that's probably my claim to fame, but I also am a comedian, content creator, and actually started as a singer too. So kind of all around live performing. I was trying to be on Broadway. My dream was to be on Broadway as my entire life growing up. So,
wow.
So now I'm getting to do this full time, which is amazing.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Right. So you blow up on TikTok, which I think I just looked, you have like 2 million followers, which is absurd. And you blew up because you have a big mouth, for lack of a better term. It's actually now a Guinness Book of World Records, right? The largest female mouth gape.
Largest female mouth gape in the world.
It's such an interesting way to say it.
At least they put mouth in there. For a while, it was just largest gape in the world. Oh. Yeah. And it was questionable, so I was like, at least they put mouth in there. And gape's kind of a funny word anyway. So I'm kind of glad, because it makes people go like, huh? Wait, what?
You're like, what? No, but the one thing I want to dive into with you is because obviously you blew up on TikTok because of this, but you've been able to expand and let the people know who are following you, all these other things you do, right? Stand-up comedy, singing, content creation, like really getting creative. And some of my favorite stuff is with your boyfriend, by the way, just throwing that out there. But let's talk a little bit about that, because we have a lot of people who, want to make a name for themselves in some way, shape, or form, even if it's something as crazy as, hey, biggest mouth. Let's talk a little bit about that, like progression. When did it happen for you? What was the aha moment of like, oh, this is what people want to see from me?
Yes. Well, very long story short, again, I'm from Maine originally, came to this area for a corporate job, been in a 9-to-5 corporate job my entire life up until a week ago. So I moved to Stanford for a corporate job. And my entire life, I knew I loved to perform. I loved singing, singing was kind of my first love. Grew up singing in church. My dad was an opera singer. So music was always kind of a first love. Loved being on stage, excuse me, and loved just performing, being in front of people, creating. And, and it's funny, I'm 31 and growing up, it's like being a content creator wasn't a job. I mean, barely being a singer, it was like, being even a comedian. I feel like, I loved watching comedy. Me and my dad would go to comedy shows all growing up. And it was never a thing where it was like, oh, like you could be a comedian. It was just like that, these types of jobs were like, oh, that's impossible. Like that would never happen, and it was, of course, parents and society that was like, go to, live the American dream, which is you go and get a 9-to-5 job, you get a real college degree and you do what you're told. And 9-to-5 corporate life is, is the way to success. So I got a business degree and I was doing corporate America stuff for a while. And long story short, I had a very come to Jesus moment at 28 and was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm just paying bills, like living this 9-to-5 life that I never really wanted. I just did because I thought I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've always loved singing. I always loved performing. So I started getting back into singing. And then, I was doing all these different open mic shows. I started getting into a band and I was like, oh my God, this is, what I've always loved. Like, what have I been doing my whole life? Like, this is what I have been meant to do. And I was going to the city 5 nights a week, going to open mics, started getting into comedy. I was doing improv and stand-up in the city. And then COVID happened. And, I have like videos of me in like April 2020. And I'm just like, is this my sign to give up? Like, is this the universe being like,
wow,
maybe don't try, maybe this isn't your thing. And I just remember like, I was like, well, maybe it is that I just stay in the 9-to-5 job forever. But I kind of this moment where I was like, TikTok was starting to blow up. And I was like, well, everyone else, like everyone in live performing is in the same situation. I always like looked up to these Broadway singers and these huge comedians that I followed. And I was like, oh my God, we're all in the same place now. And it was like, I had been trying so hard to like break into this, entertainment world, and it was like not happening. And I was like, going to 4 a.m. Broadway calls, getting like 2 hours of sleep at night. I'd go into, to these shows until 2 a.m, wake up at 4 a.m. to go to Broadway calls. And I'm like, just working my butt off, trying to get something to happen. And COVID happens. I'm like, all right, well, this is really like my sign that I should just give up. But TikTok was starting to take off. So I just, I remember I made like my first video. I just like started doing these crazy faces. I'm like, like 10-second video. It was my first video ever. And it got like 80,000 views. And like, wow. I was like, what, like, that's crazy. I was like, that took me 10 seconds and, and it already gave me like 5,000 followers. And I was just doing it like as a joke, like just to try, like, what is this app?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy. So, I was kind of playing around with it. And like many people who start were kind of like, what do I do? Do I, trying a million different things, but it really always came back to the mouth. It was like, I would do all these, and I think from the beginning too, I was like, if I'm going to do TikTok or really like go into social media, I'm going to be as authentic to myself. Like, I'm just going to make stuff that I think is funny. I never like thought that I'd ever really want to be an influencer. Like, I don't really think of myself as an influencer by any sorts of, any sense to me, but it's more like, how do I show up as, pretty much as unapologetically myself and do it in a different way? Because even at the time too, I mean, every performer was trying to get on social media and there's millions of singers, millions of comedians. What do I have that's different? And I got a big old gape.
No, I love it. And so, you think about that moment of like, I'm just doing this 9-to-5, right? Yeah. When I talk with clients and a lot of times when I speak, I talk about that fulfillment question of like, are you really fulfilled with what you're doing? And I tell people to ask themselves the question, who was I before the world told me who I should be?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's exactly what you did. You're like, okay, what else am I going to do? Yeah, I can keep pursuing this dream, but I'm told that I have to get this 9-to-5 and make this income. But now here you are officially as of a week ago. And I said it before I record, but again, congratulations. Doing this whole thing full time, which is I'm sure scary and exciting and all the things in between. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the fact that I did this random video and I did weird things with my mouth and all of a sudden people started paying attention and now it's become a focal point. Now I imagine as a child, like I have a huge forehead, was never a bright point for me as a child. By the way, that's not why I'm wearing a hat. I embrace it now. But like when you're a kid, it's tough, right? It's tough to stand out. Let's talk a little bit about that. And when did you begin just embracing it?
Yeah. Well, really, and I talk about this a lot too. Of course, it was something my entire life growing up, like I remember like being 12, 13, and people would just be like, why does your mouth look like that? Like I remember the first time really being like self-conscious of it because, you grow up and you're like, oh, it's normal, like, I don't think there's anything different about it. I guess I knew it was large. And every time that I did one of these crazy faces, people would be like, wow. I was like, okay, it must be big. But it's like your own mouth. Like, I don't really think anything of it. And it really was, middle school where people would be like, you look like a frog, or like, I got called big mouth bass, you look like a big mouth bass. Like people would joke, like, let's get the poles out. Let's go fishing for Sam's mouth. It's like funny how moments like that you never forget, no matter what age. And it really, so like, I talk about, I never used to wear lipstick. I used to put concealer over my lips because like when I was growing up, big lips and big mouth was not in, it was like, that also recently has been a thing where now everyone wants to get lip fillers, but like growing up, like everything, like I remember like just feeling like everything needs to be smaller. Like as a, growing up as a girl, it was like, no, get thinner. Everything on you needs to be thin. Be small, like just be as small as possible. So, now I feel like it's a little bit more acceptable to have the big lips and, a bigger mouth, but I was very insecure about it. So I didn't really want to show it off. And even when I started doing comedy, like I even remember like some directors being like, okay, it's a lot of mouth, it's like, anytime I do these, cause it is, I grew up also watching like Jim Carrey and a lot of these physical actors that like, to me, like I love the physical comedy. Obviously, we see a lot of my stuff. It's a lot of physical comedy and just like silly kind of slapstick kind of stuff. And, but for some people who, people were just, it brings a lot of attention, just keep your mouth smaller. Like, can you please make your mouth smaller? So it really wasn't until like TikTok. I mean, literally, someone asked me that, like, when did you really embrace your mouth? I'm like, probably a year ago, like into TikTok when I first started doing it. And then it became this thing of like, oh my God, like that's incredible. And I'm like, it's incredible. Like, what? And it was just something different. Again, I think, it was something that made me unique where it was, especially on TikTok where everything's so niche. And, I think that what is so cool about TikTok that's different than all these other platforms like Instagram, where you need to look perfect and everything's filtered, and where TikTok, it's just like a really amazing platform. I mean, it has its pros and cons, but it really has like embraces all these people with these crazy and unique features or talents. And then it just, it changed everything for me, really. And I think it really was when I just started being like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this as authentically myself as possible. I'm going to do what I think is, something that I would want to see, like something that's relatable. And especially in a time too, in COVID, where it's like, obviously no one's really going through a great time right now. It's like, what do I want to do that'll make people forget about the craziness of the world going on right now and make this as relatable? And someone will watch this, be like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who went through something like this, or, this makes me feel a little bit less alone in this crazy world.
No, for sure. And like, it's crazy when you think about like, everything should have been small, right? Keep it quiet. Should have been small, especially I imagine as a female growing up. And now everything's so large and everything's so loud. And that's what's created the happiness for you. That's what's created the success for you. And I think there's a lesson in that, right? Like there's a lesson in understanding, like, be big, be bold, be yourself. As cliche, I feel like that should be girls have those signs in their house. Like that should be one of those.
Yeah,
be
exactly.
Be brave, be whatever I said. Make it a sign and sell it. But, with that being said, I mean, it's so true right now. Obviously you started creating this content while you were still working full time. How did it affect your job? Like, obviously they knew you had 2 million followers on TikTok. They had to have known.
Yes, definitely. Well, it was funny. So I worked in sales. So I was an outside sales rep for a genetics company. So, a lot of times I was working with providers, with doctors, OBGYNs, primary care. And I think number one, I mean, luckily, thank God there weren't like a ton of doctors that really feel like were kind of, they're a little busy in the last year.
Yeah.
So but it was mostly there's the staff, the younger staff that was watching it. And of course it helped me like, in the corporate world, because they would see me and they'd be like, oh my God, it's the big mouth girl. It's like, come on in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think some people were like, all right, what's her end game here? I think a lot of people knew that, I'd always wanted to be a singer. Even like, we had like work talent shows and I would always sing or do something. And they're like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
But it was crazy, but it was, it all also happened so fast too, where it was like 1 second, it was like in August of 2020 and I just hit around 100,000 followers. And then by October, I was almost at 1 million. So it was like so fast. And it was like, crazy. Yeah, it was like, whoa, how did that happen? Almost, Yeah,
that's unreal. I mean, and by the way, I was a medical sales. I know at times how hard it is to get past that gatekeeper, right? So that's anything that helps when you're making a living doing that stuff is a huge thing. And honestly, like I created this podcast while I was working full time. So the first 2.5 years of this podcast, I had a job, and ended up losing my last job because my boss was intimidated by me and what I was building, which is kind of crazy. Wow. But that gave me the nudge to finally jump in, right? Like you just did, and go, let me make this on my own. Let me do my own thing. And it opened up the world to me, which I imagine is happening for you. Now, I know there's people listening and they're going, I get it. She sings, she's a stand-up comedian, she's a content creator. How is she monetizing this skill that she has? How is she doing it? Because I think a lot of people go, I see all these people online. I just don't quite understand how they're making money. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about that process and how you choose who you work with.
Yeah. And that's such a great question, because I wondered the same thing. And I try and be as authentic and transparent with my audience too. Like, I love doing ask me anythings. And a lot of people ask me, and I do post about it too in my stories and talk about how I do that. Cause it is one of those things that's like, okay, you're a content creator, but how do you like pay your bills? You're like, okay, get it. You make like big mouth videos. So, I have an agency that I work with, that I would say like 90% of the sponsorships. Most people do email me, reach out. I get a lot of DMs and a lot of emails from companies. But I, also have been starting to reach out to just naturally like things that I already love, whether it's just, like my tushy, like the bidet thing that naturally came up, like I just gotten a bidet and I was like, I'm obsessed with this bidet. Like I need to do ads for them. And I reached out and I was like, I have all these ideas. I'd love to make, some content and promote. And so that was one that just, happened because, I just reached out to them, but most of them are. And obviously I try to pick brands that make sense. It's like, I don't know if it really makes sense for me to do like a Nintendo, promotion, because I don't play video games. Like there's some stuff that comes out. I'm like, I know nothing about this. Like I couldn't even be the first one to like promote this because I would never use this. And people are going to smell this. Like people are smarter now these days, where I feel like 10 years ago you could do an ad and it would like, might do well, but it's like people are smart on what, they know you're like, and I want to be as authentic and true to my audience where it's not like I'm feeding them a bunch of crap about a product that I don't use. Yeah. So I really do try and make sure there are things that I love. And normally it's food related, obviously. Like I actually do a lot with, there's a company called Meal Me that I've been using that I promote. It's like the new version of Uber Eats, and it helps like choose restaurants that don't give as much profit away from the restaurant. So there's like, different things. I just did one too that was for women sexual products, like, so, and I'm like, I love this. Yeah. You missed that one. Yeah. You got to go back and check it. All kinds of stuff, but yeah, definitely a lot of foods. And it's, again, most of them come through, they'll come through my agency. I'll have them, email my agent and they can pay anywhere. Like for following, like I have, for full transparency. I mean, you can pay, luckily, because I have a big platform on TikTok and Instagram, you can package deals. So I can be like, hey, I'm happy to do it on TikTok, but I can also post it on Instagram. And normally they'll pay anywhere from like probably like $1,000 to $3,000 for a video. So, and obviously as you grow, you get more, and I have 2 million on TikTok. So it's, obviously they get paid a little bit more for the TikTok promotion. But yeah, it's basically like they can email me if I have an idea, if there's someone, if I like them and it's, a product that I can use and I would promote, then I'll pitch some ideas, I'll come together with some drafts and of course, trying to make them topical and trendy. And that's, if you can do a couple of those a month, you're making a full-time career off of that. So that's a majority of how I make my money. And then also TikTok does pay too. And I think a lot of people have learned more about that. The TikTok Creator Fund, a lot of people have maybe heard of, which doesn't pay a ton, but it's definitely, an extra couple hundred a week because they pay by views. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 3 cents for every 1,000 views, which again, doesn't sound like a ton, but of course you get a video that does 1 million views. That's a couple hundred. Yeah. Yeah. So, obviously that helps as you're growing and you get, some viral videos, like one of my videos that got 75 million views, cool. A couple $1,000 just from TikTok. So you get that. Instagram starting to pay too. So Instagram now pays for IGTV. If you have
I did see followers.
That. Yeah. So, and they're also, I just enrolled last weekend, Facebook/Instagram, obviously owned by the same thing, are now paying for Reels. So now they're paying for Reels Watch, which they just started rolling out. And they're also, if you saw, they're putting them on Facebook. So you can get a lot more views and a lot more visibility. So that, and then also finding other passive ways. So I'm also working on a merch line.
Nice. That's big. That's big on TikTok. I see a lot of people, they say they like sell out merch in seconds. Like they'll release it and they're sold out, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's an easy way for people to support creators that they love, because it is like a lot of people are like, how do I support you? Especially someone who like lives in Washington, but I do a lot of live shows are in the New York area. So, until I can, really get get my stuff up and running in order, for them, someone who's in Washington, to support, like, how can I support you? Buy some merch, it's a really easy way to support. So working on that, I'm also working on doing a podcast too, which is another great way because obviously you can get ads on your podcast, and then live performances. So that's another way too. So, I'm trying to have at least one show a week, trying to get up to having, at least 2 or 3 would be, ideal. And it's a lot of, obviously I live in Stanford, so a lot of in the New York City area. And my goal would be to have this one woman show that eventually I can travel all around and do, because, like I said, I do stand-up comedy and I sing and I actually write my own comedic songs. So, and then of course, my show, I got to have some mouth stuff. So I do, like a mouth challenge. I'll have people come up and do a big bite challenge with me. So it's a whole variety type show. So working on getting that up, and then that'll also obviously be, if I can start doing bigger shows, bigger ticket price. That's
for sure. Yeah, I'm obsessed with this idea of stand-up comedy. Number one, how hard it is to create content is crazy. That's why I've had multiple stand-up comedians on the show, not only because I'm fans of theirs, but the idea behind it's insane. Like talking to Bert Kreischer and talking about his journey and how he got to where he was and how much goes into it and how much he constantly has to be on and how do you figure out these jokes. And Drew Lynch, who is not similar to you. I don't know if you know Drew.
Yes.
He was. Yeah, so he's been on my show twice, and I think he was like second on America's Got Talent or something like that. But it's an interesting thing. When I talked to him a second time, it was about like the evolution of his comedy. He's like, I can't tell stuttering jokes all the time. Like I want to be a comedian who happens to stutter, not a stuttering comedian. And so it'll be interesting to see you evolve that away from maybe down the road, obviously, the big mouth content, but you're already doing that now, right? With all the variety stuff.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to do, because that's the thing that a lot of people are like, you don't want to be known, because of course a lot of my stand-up is talking about my big mouth, of course, because that's kind of what I'm known for. So there's a lot of self-deprecating, a lot of stories about growing up with a big mouth and what's, things that have happened to me as a big mouth girly. But yeah, it's like, I don't always want to be known for that, but you almost kind of have to have some sort of homage to your to your background, to how you
For
started
sure.
off to some degree, so it's like, excuse me, I kind of open, a lot of my comedy will open with, here's the big mouth, here's the gimmick of it all. And then getting into some other stuff that, doesn't have to do with my mouth. But it is, of course, for right now, just because it is such a claim to fame.
Oh, for sure.
And a lot of people don't know. I mean, I really got the Guinness World Record at the end of July. So like, this has all been like very recently. So I'm still like kind of coming off that press tour of like the Guinness World Record. So yeah, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, of course, how I, keep revolutionizing. Because of course, once you do a tour of that too, then it's like, all right, where do you go from here? Then, that's the other thing, is then creating a whole nother show with new content. And so, yeah, that's the tricky part. That's the tricky part about comedy, is it's like, you always got to be coming up with new stuff. And especially with social media, where everything's so quick, and you put it out there, and then once it's out there, it's like, okay, it's hard to use that again. And you got to always be coming up with new stuff.
Yeah. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, that's always going to be your thing. Bert Kreischer will always take off his shirt. Like that is what it is. Right. So, but I love it. I'm intrigued by that whole thing. And I'm excited to see you in the years past. How does this evolve? How does it go? Because I look at things weird. I'm a wrestling fan, WWE wrestling, but I like it because
cool.
why are they making the decisions they're making? And like, I'm weird like that. So anyway, as we go through this, I mean, I just love seeing your evolution. Right. So now, as a newly formed full-time creator, I'd love to get into a little bit about some of the things you do daily, right? So a question that I ask every single person on my show is, number one, it's a two-part question. Number one, what is your definition of success? And number two is, what are 3 things you're doing every day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah, that's such a great question. In terms of success, I feel like it's changed a lot for me too. Like, especially over the years, like success was like, growing up, it was in my head. It was like, be independent, never need to rely on a man for anything, make your own money. Money equals happiness equals success. So it was like money, money, money.
Yeah.
And I was doing well, in medical sales. Like, I wasn't, I was fortunate enough that I didn't really have to worry about bills. And I was, doing really well. I was one of the top reps in the company. And I think it was like, part of my come to Jesus at 28. And it was like, all right, I'm making great money. I have this 9-to-5 job. But like, why am I still so sad? It's like, why am I still miserable? Why am I taking on the highest dose of antidepressants and still can't sleep every night?
Yeah.
And I'm 50 pounds overweight and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. It's like, what? Like, this is supposed to be what success is, but I am like, feel the furthest away from it possible. So I think now I really look at success as, it's like, it's cheesy and corny as it is, but it's like, what do I feel like, when I wake up every morning, do I feel like I can genuinely say that I am happy and I feel like I'm living my life as authentically for myself, and also feel like I'm giving back in a way too. And I feel like that's probably like a long-winded answer, but it's like to be able to wake up happy, to feel fulfilled doing what I love, but also find a way that I feel like I am making an impact on the world in some way, shape, or form, which I'm also trying to figure out like how I can make sure that I still feel like I'm giving back. Sure. I like to think that my content too, whenever I talk about my story, it's like, hey, if I can inspire one person who sees my story and is like, hey, if that big mouth freaky girl can do it, why can't I, or, I'm 31 and like quitting a job that like most people be like, are you insane? Yeah. My parents definitely think I'm out of my mind. But I also want to find a way to have a bigger impact. And I actually am trying to work with a new organization called Stand Up for Girls, which teaches stand-up comedy to like underserved communities for young girls aged 13 to 18, and how to teach comedy, like to grow your confidence and to grow your self-esteem and to use it as a way to empower yourself. And so I'm really, really excited. So hopefully going to be a teacher for that and rolling out, helping them promote the program. So it's like, all right, how can I, because that was such a time for me. I'm like, if I could find a way to give back to that 13-year-old girl that, like, for me being 13 was like the worst time in my life and felt the most alone and most insecure and most lost. And it's like, there are a million things that I wish I could tell to my 13-year-old self. And it's like, if there's a way that I can tell it to other girls, and teach them, things that I wish that I knew, or things that I wish someone had told me when I was 13, like that'll be really fulfilling for me. So to answer your very short, I think that's my definition of success, to answer that first part of your question, again, just to find a way to give back and feel fulfilled every day.
Yeah, I love it.
And for 3 things that I do every day, well, I talked a lot about too, and I've done a whole video on it. I'm very protective over my morning routine. And that's one thing too, on a way that I've kind of dealt with my mental health and also gained my confidence, especially in a world on social media where it can be a little brutal out there from some of the trolls. So
yeah, I can't even imagine what you deal with. That's got to be on a whole nother level.
Oh my God, it's crazy. You really have to do, a lot of, self-reflecting, and, there's certain practices that I have to put in place and certain things I need to remind myself so that you don't get wrapped up in that, because you can for sure. And thank God I do also have so many amazing supportive people too that follow me and are, I also get a lot of nice messages too. So but it is, you can get 10 nice messages and you get 1 or 100 nice messages and 1 negative one, and all you think about is that negative.
Yeah, and you're like, why? What's wrong with this person? Why do they hate me?
Like if they hate, I'm stuck. It's like 100 like, we love you. And it's like one person says I hate you. It's like everyone hates me. But so I have like a very protective morning routine where I do, my gratitude. I'm huge on gratitude, practicing gratitude every single day, because I am cognizant that I am living a life that a lot of people are like, that's crazy. It's like, and it is, that I get to do what I love, and I get to make money, and I get to wake up every morning and I don't have to clock into a job, which is also terrifying. It also has its cons, because I'm also like, okay, what am I going to do for health insurance? And I don't have a 401k anymore. So there are some things like, okay. But it is a crazy, like my financial advisor was like, oh, it's like you're retiring. I'm like, I wouldn't say retiring. Like, let's not get that twisted.
I'm 31. I'm not retiring.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to be probably working for the rest of my life at this point. But I'm doing what I love. So like, it's like I took a huge pay cut to, obviously quit my job and quit having a 401k and health benefits and dental insurance to make half of what I was making before with no benefits and doing everything on my own. So that's, but I am, again, so grateful for even having the opportunity to do it and have this amazing platform. So practicing gratitude, and also just, finding new ways to push myself, that's another thing, is it's like, what's something that I can do that, are things that scare me a little bit, and you do kind of also get, once you start doing things that you're scared of, you kind of get addicted to it in a way. And it's like, what else can I do that's scary? Whether it's reaching out to someone, what can I do today that gives me a little bit of anxiety thinking about doing it, but, it's always good to push your boundaries a little bit. So like, sending a DM to someone that's, like, can I be on your podcast? Like, sending that message to Krista Stefano from Hey Babe podcast. I was like, oh my God, I feel so weird doing this, but like, I'd love to be on your podcast. It's like, so doing one thing too, that kind of scares me. And then also, the third is like trying to find a way to do something that is giving back, even whether it's like doing, kind of a quote unquote good deed. I don't know if these are like the corniest answers ever, but it's like, it's like the karma of it all. I'm like such a hard believer in karma, where it's like, hey, if I can, even if it's holding the door open for someone, or, letting someone go in front of you in traffic, or paying for someone's coffee, little things that you can do that it always comes back to you. So
yeah, no, for sure. I love all those answers. It wasn't corny at all. They're all phenomenal answers. And like I said, I've followed you. I've seen the growth. I love what you're doing. I love all this stuff that you're creating for the world. Excited for your podcast. The podcast is a completely different journey that you'll soon find out that it's a different world when you get into the podcast game. We could talk about that when we're done recording if you want, but
yes, totally. I'd love to pick your brain on that.
No, for sure. But I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Before I get there, where do people find you? Where can they follow you? Obviously TikTok and Instagram. What's all the information?
Yeah. So my biggest platforms, TikTok and Instagram. Starting to do a little bit more on YouTube. So, but my handle's the same everywhere. So Sam Ramsdell, and it's Ramsdell 5, my lucky number. And that's again on all the platforms. But and I would say those are probably the best place to find me. And if I have any shows, my website is samantharamsdell.com, but obviously on all my social media platforms, mostly Instagram too. I'm really good about posting all my shows. And upcoming new adventures. You never know. I was just on, I don't know if you saw too, I just posted it yesterday, but I was on Italy's Got Talent.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, how does that even happen?
I know. Talk about other things. That was like probably one of the scariest things I've ever done because I had no idea what I was getting into. And it was like, even like on the plane there, I was like, I could be going to this place and could be murdered and never seen again. Like, it was so like, literally like an email of like, hey, do you want to come to Italy and be on this TV show? And I was like, sure. And it was crazy, but
that is crazy.
Yeah. So some other exciting things that hopefully, and launching the podcast Weird and Proud next week. So, and I'll be posting all the links on my socials. So.
No, I love it. I'm excited for you. And like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
I've had a lot of moments of growth recently. And I mean, maybe this is like a cliche because I feel like everyone's answering this right now, but like, I think COVID and the pandemic had a lot, a huge impact on a lot of people. I know it did for me, and in a way where it was like, life is way too short. It's like, really, like, how do we wake up one morning and then all of a sudden the world was shut down? It was like, It really felt like it was like, what just happened? And now we're
only for 2 weeks though.
It was only just 2 weeks. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So what was it? What's the curve? What was it? Flatten the curve.
Yep.
The curve we're still working on it. Still working on flattening her out. Maybe one day we'll eventually flatten that curve.
Well, you just had a crazy thing where you tested positive, but you weren't positive, and it destroyed all the stuff that you're working on. That's insane too.
I have to be like the universe. Like, either I was like, maybe I was going to be like on a car crash on the way there. It was like, I had to be like, the universe was protecting me from something happening because I had to cancel 2 shows. I was supposed to be on the Nick Cannon show that got, it's like, oh my God. But yeah. And then, ended up being negative. It's like, I can't even. So I think it really was, and I also had that year, when I was 28, and I don't know if you're spiritual and what you believe, like your Saturn return, that was turning 28 and being in a place where it was like, I'm paying bills every day. And like, that's what I do. Like, I'm living my life to pay bills.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be 90 on my deathbed and look back and be like, wow, I had a great time paying bills every day. It's like, what am I going to look back and want to be remembered for? And then with COVID happening, it was like, we just don't know what's, again, it's the most cliche saying ever. It's like, tomorrow really is not promised. Today, all we know is we have right now. And what are we going to do, to have the biggest impact and to do what we love? And, we were put on this earth for a reason, and it wasn't to pay bills. I keep saying that, but it's like, I just felt like that was it. It was like, I'm going to this job that I'm not fulfilled for. So, I think, and again, I think for a lot of people, COVID and the pandemic made a lot of people really have that moment where, some people have it and they get cancer, they get like they get in a car accident, and they have someone like, oh my God, I got to change my life. Like, I almost just died. And I think from COVID, it has that natural reaction where you're like, oh my God, anything can happen. Aliens could literally land tomorrow and take over the world. Like, at this point, so it's like, why are we not living every day? Like, kind of like it's your last, but also living every day doing what you love. And, if you have an opportunity to do it, or at least, even if you can't quit your job today, which again, I was for 3 years working I'm sure you for a while were probably working a job too. It's like doing one thing today that for you, doing one thing that makes you happier, even if it's not your job, but just one thing for yourself.
Yeah, that's so important. Sam, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey and craziness. And I look forward to staying connected and seeing, where you go in this crazy world. But I just love when I see people doing what they love 24/7. So again, for the third time, congratulations. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.